This is the eCommerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Mr. Kyle BIGLEY from TxtCart, I would love to welcome you to the eCommerce Edge podcast today. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. We did have a few technical difficulties, but we seem to have gotten past those, and we seem to be recording okay. So hopefully everything flows smoothly from here on out. Before we get into TxtCart and what it is you guys do with your amazing platform, why don't you tell me how you came to be in the tech space, the e-com space, the digital space? Like what drew you in? Everybody's got a unique founder's story. It's kind of almost like the hero's arc. So tell me how you came to be in the space.
Yeah, I was always intrigued with the space as a whole and just the whole kind of ability to make money online. It wasn't until I was in college, though, that I really got introduced to it. And for me, that came in the realm of drop shipping, which I'm sure you were well familiar with. So as a young college kid, I was obviously going to classes, studying finance. I thought I was going to go and be an investment banker on Wall Street. So while I was pursuing that career, just looking for ways to, pique my curiosity on entrepreneurship and business. I knew I wanted to get involved in business. I just wasn't sure what business, when that was going to happen. Came across YouTube, different courses, drop shipping, and it just really spoke to me. So to make a long story short, spun up a couple of drop shipping stores as a college kid, found like moderate success, but wasn't my kind of cup of tea, if you will. Pivot into what I would call is like branded drop shipping or starting a small brand now. Found a little bit more success with that. It was actually in the like menswear and like luxury bracelets and accessories was what we were selling. So I ran that brand for a little less than 6 months and then ended up selling it to a small buyer out of Florida. And I just had this epiphany moment where I was like, okay, I could do this, but it feels unscalable and like a lot of risk, or I wanted to try and find something that had like recurring revenue aspects to it. And obviously coming into the Shopify space, because that's what I used to build out my dropshipping stores and my brands, I was familiar with the Shopify app store. And that really spoke to me because back then it was only like 3,000 apps maybe. And so it was super new. It was super intriguing. At that time, SMS was very new. It wasn't as mature as email. It wasn't like super sexy at the time. Still not sure it's super sexy, but definitely less so then. And at the time, there was only a handful of companies doing it. And I was just like, I wasn't super impressed with any of the options when I had my stores and my brand. And honestly, it was just like, okay, there's recurring revenue here. It's a big market. I think this could grow into something similar to email. And it's something that if I had a technical partner, because I'm not a technical founder, I feel like I could probably make something better. And that's pretty much what I decided to do. A lot of like late night conversations with my then roommate and good friend. He had a coding background. We tried to build like an MVP out together. That didn't really quite work, but through a really weird story, which I'm sure we'll hit on here, got introduced to my now partners and co-founders, and built out TxtCart essentially months after graduating and launched that within a few months of actually starting my full-time job.
Wow. Okay, so you were effectively building this in tandem, like almost like a side hustle, so to speak.
Yeah, it was a side hustle for many years.
Wow. Okay, so I know how you feel because my first ever e-commerce pure play business that I ran myself was also a side hustle. So I was working inside an agency, and my friend and I I was like, why am I helping all these e-commerce businesses grow their business when I could be helping to grow my own business? And I was like, okay, let's just go ahead and do this thing as a side hustle. We'll work from our bedrooms late at night. And if it turns into something, then cool. We can quit our full-time jobs and go all in on e-commerce, which we eventually did. And we were able to run that for very successfully for 7 years. But that whole side hustle thing I feel, and I know we'll talk about lots of other things, but I feel like AI is now able to help accelerate side hustles. I just know even for me working in Lovable and Claude Code and everything else, I just feel like AI is going to accelerate the era of the side hustle. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to just further enable builders, people that have a lot of agency, that are innovative, that have a lot of passion. I would have killed the technology that we have today back then. I love that you got started on the side hustle as well. I think that is a super viable path. And to your point, we'll see more of that. But to build something out bootstrapped on the side in the space like this was like unheard of and was definitely not the sexy approach. Everyone would try and rush to raise VC funding. And I think we're going to see the pendulum swing in the other direction now, where bootstrapping, staying super lean, high margin, a lot of kind of autonomy is going to become the new kind of normal. And I think that is great for guys like you and I, and great for smaller businesses, probably a little bit more disruptive for incumbents. But I think all around it's very exciting, but also stressful times with how much is changing and how much you can do now with these different tools.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And if we look at SMS as a medium, like most people protect their text inbox, they protect it much more zealously than they protect even their email inbox. Because we can run filters on our email inbox. We've got tools
Yeah.
now. Apple's got their own tools. There's a whole lot of tools to help manage email inboxes, but there's not too many tools out there to help us manage our text inbox. And at least here in Mexico, and I know you're based in New York, and so I'm guessing your target market is primarily the US, but at least here in Mexico, people don't send SMSs very much, but what they do send is they send WhatsApp messages. So like the default communication mechanism, even for businesses here, like the default channel is not email, WhatsApp.
Yeah.
I get WhatsApp messages almost every single day from businesses that I've booked something with, or businesses that I've done business with before, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for some reason, WhatsApp feels less invasive
Really.
than text. I'm not sure why,
Yeah.
that's the case
I
for
have
a
a
lot of
theory
people.
on that, probably because, like you were saying, we've been trained with email that it's very transactional, very promotional. I think, to your point, WhatsApp is the predominant form for messaging communication pretty much in the rest of the world outside of the US. So again, you guys, us as humans, are just trained in that regard. So if you're trained to get those kind of transactional texts or those marketing messages via WhatsApp, I think you're just a lot more accepting of it, and you probably safeguard your actual texting inbox a lot more safely than folks in the States do. But I think as marketers, we have a tendency to ruin those things over time anyway. You're going to probably see more filtering, more restrictive kind of measures by different carriers. You're going to see things like known senders in your SMS inbox. Given enough time, and I hope it doesn't, but it'll probably end up a little bit more like email, where it's just like people are so well trained that like you're going to get these different communications via text or WhatsApp from these brands that you shop at. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned WhatsApp, because yeah, pretty much for the rest of the world, it is like the dominant form of communication, and it's very similar to text. So we're actually looking at it pretty closely in terms of, we don't want to branch out too far. We'll never add on like email. We want to be pretty specialized in what we do. But I think the natural evolution of expanding our channels for messaging would be WhatsApp and an RCS, which is like SMS 2.0.
Yes.
So that's something we're looking at very closely for this year. And yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah, and I guess also because people are using their cell phone number for WhatsApp, they're using that as the
Yeah.
basis and the foundation for their WhatsApp messaging, then it feels like a natural adjacency. And what
Yep.
you guys bill yourself, TxtCart is the leading conversational SMS marketing platform for e-commerce brands. And I've had, I think, one or two, maybe three other text marketing platforms on the podcast over the last 600 plus episodes. It feels like even email marketing platforms like Klaviyo, and it feels like everybody and their dog is jumping on the text messaging bandwagon. So there
Yeah.
must be something to this. There must be something to text messaging that achieves a level of cut through, that achieves a level of reach that email does not, and stickiness that email does
Yeah.
not. But I guess on the flip side of that, it feels like brands, if they treat SMS exactly like email, then they're probably going to get ridiculous unsubscribed rates, ridiculous opt
Yeah.
out rates, ridiculous block rates. Talk me through how, when you take on a new client, do you challenge them to be more cautious with text message marketing versus email? Because email, it feels like batch and blast still. There's still a
Yeah.
lot of batch and blast. There's still 3, 4 emails a week. Even here in Mexico, Costco sends me like 3 marketing emails a week,
Yeah.
and they're massive global behemoths. So it feels like the risk is, if you just simply move your strategy wholesale from email to text, you're probably going to lose. But if you have a unique, dedicated text strategy that is much more targeted, much more infrequent, much more valuable to the recipient, then you're probably going to get a much better result. But does that take some education on your part with the brands you work with, so they don't just treat it like email and batch and blast every day?
Yeah, no, super good question. And honestly, a loaded question. I think there was a lot of stuff to hit on there. To your earlier point, yeah, I think there's a couple of things at play here. So you mentioned a lot of companies adding on SMS. So in 2020, 2021, it became like the hot and sexy thing to add on. And what you saw was these ESPs that have now shifted into what even are they, like CRMs? Look at what's happening with Klaviyo, Omnisend. So you've had these companies add on different channels for messaging, and that oftentimes look like an ESP tacking on SMS, and then they tacked on push, and then they tacked on some sort of CRM offering. So they've become this wholesale come one, come all platform. And I guess for them, it makes sense. But the problem in that is that they obviously have massive marketing budgets, and they've trained I don't want to say consumer, but they've trained the brand owners, founders, marketers that this might make sense to pile up into one platform. And obviously we, along with maybe one of our competitors who are vehemently only focused on SMS, we obviously disagree with that. I've always preached specialization over generalization. And to your point, you can't just treat SMS like email because they are totally different channels and they should be treated as such. For example, some people, they only buy from an email. Like I've never bought from an email before, right? Some people prefer to shop traditionally online. Some people prefer in person. Some people prefer text. So you have to meet the customer where they want to shop and how they want to communicate with your brand. So it is important to have that sort of omnipresence focus and make sure that you do have setups for each channel, but lumping it all into one platform for the ease of your agency to manage everything doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution for you or the best cost or whatever it might be. I think also with consumers and millennials in particular, just our generation is digital first. We grew up on the phone, right? And even more now with the younger folks, it's just like everything is on the phone, social media, shopping, everything. So it's like meeting your customer where they are. Email for us has always been this channel that has just been spammy, if you will. And I think we have a responsibility as SMS marketers and as just brand marketers in general to not really let that happen with SMS, but it probably will over time. But part of the reason why it's so much more successful is because it is a more intimate form of communication. People do value that because historically it's just been used for friends and family and kind of work and stuff along that sort. So being able to tap into that in a way that resonates with the customer can be super powerful. That's why it lends itself to, I think it's the 90%, 98% open rates. With our platform, we've seen as high as 40% response rates with some of our flow templates. So that on a comparison A/B, email versus text, like the metrics are far superior. Obviously, email, way more creative. You can do a lot more educational stuff in that. You can have branded templates and images. You really can't do that too much in SMS. You can to a certain degree with RCS now, and you can a little bit with MMS, but historically, MMS has been about 3 to 4 times more expensive. So it's been pretty cost prohibitive, which is a shame because sometimes you do see some better ROI metrics on the multimedia side of things. So trying to push on that. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of education involved, even specifically with our clients. We work with a lot of newer, smaller brands. We do work with drop shippers. Our ICP is at like 0 to 10 million. So we're not going after the enterprise customers just yet, but there is a lot on the education, on the frequency of the campaigns, on the flows to send. We see a lot of under adoption on campaigns. I think for that sort of fear of annoying your customers or people are going to opt out or they don't understand how frequent they should send a text. I'm signed up to hundreds of brands on my phone. I'm sure you are. And the bigger the brand, the more relentless they are with the texting. I can get a text almost every day from some of these large brands, whereas that feels like a little bit too much. But the truth is, they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't profitable. So there is something in that as well. For them, I think they have obviously in-house retention teams and they're working with agencies. So they've probably crafted out a pretty deliberate strategy on who they're sending to and when they're sending and different segmentation. But I think the kind of wholesale advice that we typically give is make sure you're sending a campaign to either a large segment of your list or your entire list at least once a month minimum, and ideally once every 2 weeks just to stay relevant. And again, if it's driving revenue, and I think the number that I discussed with the team today was our campaigns are driving around 32x ROI on average, which is not a small number. Keep sending campaigns. And if customers opt out, it's not necessarily a bad signal. You were basically cleaning your list and consolidating that list for people that actually want to hear from you over that channel.
And I guess to your point, because SMS is still, and MMS definitely, they're still more expensive channels than email on a per send basis. Having people opt out, having people self-cleanse off of an SMS list actually ultimately helps you because it's killing two birds with one stone. It means you're only sending to a targeted list of people that want to hear from you. but you're also
Mhm.
saving money by not sending them. Like in an email, if you send an email to somebody that doesn't necessarily want to hear it from you, hey, that costs you next to nothing. With SMS, that's not the case. And so
Mhm.
therefore, that sort of self-cleansing effect of an SMS list is actually, there's actually an upside to that versus pure downside. So it
Yeah.
feels like, yeah, you probably have to play with frequencies a little bit. And obviously, if you start sending one SMS a week and unsubscribes spike, then that's probably a good, you may have to play with that for a while, right? Your audience may be better off with one a month. Your audience may be better with one every 3 weeks, one every 2 weeks, one every 1 week. I guess it's just A/B testing that frequency, those flows, those segments. And then you may have segments that want to hear from you once every month. May have other segments that may want to hear from you. I guess what you could do is you could break it down, for example, based on the average repurchase rate of somebody through your website for somebody that's purchased at more than one time. Then
Mm.
you can probably maybe base it on that. There's probably a lot of, walk me through the types of segmentation you are able to do in your platform to help drive that focus and help minimize unsubscribes.
Yeah, so we have different like segmentation templates, I'll call it, but we also have a full segmentation builder. So you can get like super in the weeds in terms of how you want to build out custom segments, which we do have some clients or agency clients that they do get super granular on that. But for most of our users, we try and keep everything very simple. And we do provide a bunch of different kind of segmentation offerings on the default. I'm just pull up something here for you really quick. So a couple out of the box would be new customers. So this is any customer with one purchase. Loyal customers, we typically quantify that as folks that have spent $250 or more, but that can be configured. Obviously, we have both of the sort of abandoned checkout recovered as well as the abandoned checkout non-recovered segmentations. We have existing customers that have 1+ purchases, repeat customers that have 2+ purchases. You have potential subscribers, and we quantify that as customers with no purchases. Abandoned checkout, we have a bunch of different abandoned checkout segments. So for those of you that don't know, and I'm not sure how much history you have on TxtCart, we started out as a checkout abandonment platform before we were more of a full SMS marketing platform. So a lot of our features were geared towards that. We have a whole bunch of different segments on abandoned checkout, whether they've purchased in last 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, did not purchase in those days. We have general purchased in the last 30, 90, 60. We break it up by country. So your US, your Canadian, your Australian, your UK, those are the 4 regions that we serve. And that's just in our kind of, again, templated audience segmentation. And then we also have a full segment builder where you can get very granular in the platform, picking things like the campaigns clicked or their AOV or the last text date or number of texts sent. And you can really build out something to your desire. So we've tried to build that out in a way that allows the user to have total kind of control over their lifecycle marketing while keeping it very simple for the typical user.
And how do you encourage, or do you encourage at all, your customers? I don't know, let's say they're running Klaviyo for email, maybe they've got a separate push notifications platform, then they've got your platform for the best of breed for each channel. They're running best of breed platforms for each channel. How do you encourage them to look holistically at how many communications in general their customer might receive in a week or in a month or whatever it might be? Because obviously, if we're hitting them with a push notification, an email, or 2 or 3, plus maybe 1 or 2 SMSs per month, that's a lot of communication. So do you encourage them to look at holistically at how many messages a individual customer might receive? Or are you saying, no, in our experience, let's treat them all as individual channels. Let's let the customer opt out of each channel individually as they see fit. Let's treat them differently. Let's treat the frequencies differently. Let's treat the brevity of the messages differently or the targeting differently. Let's treat these as very unique channels, and let's not really worry about that cross-channel communication touch point and frequency.
Yeah, as an SMS first company, we're only focused on SMS. That's all we do. So we're not a CRM, we're not an omni-channel or multi-channel marketing company where we have to try and stitch together the life cycle journey from each touch point, each different communication. Not something that we're super focused on. We really hit on the core flows for SMS, pushing people to make sure they're leveraging campaigns as a valid marketing channel. And then another extension of the company is support through messaging, right? So the byproduct of conversational SMS is that sort of two-way communication where if you have a question or something that needs to be resolved quickly, rather than opening up Ticket or going through an email, you're already in the text. You can ask that via the text, and an AI agent or a live person can actually answer that. But for us, it's not really focused on optimizing all of these different sort of touch points across these different channels. It's people are going to gravitate to where they want to be and shop. And if they've opted into these different sort of platforms, the opt-ins themselves have gotten more stringent over the years. If they've given you that signal, odds are they want to hear from you. And if they don't, they're going to opt out. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know for ESPs, they're incentivized to keep those contact lists high because that's typically how they bill. But for companies like us, where it's on SMS sending, it doesn't matter if you have 10,000 subs or 100,000 subs. If you're sending to 1,000 subs, the cost is the cost for the messaging.
And how do you handle opt-in? Is it typically, we already see opt-in for email. Is it like a separate text box usually for SMS, or is it usually a single tick box for both email and SMS? Or how do you typically approach that? I'm guessing that's usually found in the checkout,
Yeah. So we're
and
kind of,
maybe even email flows.
yeah, so we're bound. So we only service Shopify as a client. Shopify is our only integration at the time of filming this. So bound to Shopify's opt-in and checkout process. So it's a pretty standard one. They have settings within their kind of checkout settings page to allow the store owner to even collect phone numbers and to use that for SMS marketing. It's a separate checkbox. It's unchecked by default. You cannot have it pre-checked like an email, different set of compliance. So to do true A2P marketing, which is automated to peer, it's a checkbox that has to be checked. The phone number has to be put in, and then you're good to go. For P2P, which is a little bit more of a gray area, that would be peer-to-peer, which we do offer add-ons for that, which is a live agent reaching out to abandoned checkouts. That's what I talked about earlier, where we got our start as a checkout abandonment company before just being an SMS marketing platform. That's a little bit more on the way that you can collect opt-ins. Basically, it's like an implicit opt-in. So if you have the phone text field there, if you type in your phone number, that shipping phone field, it doesn't necessarily require the opt-in checkout box. So it does allow you to text about 30 to 40% more contacts. However, you can't use that in the traditional promotional A2P flows that you would see, like a welcome series or a more traditional order confirmation per se.
So you track those as independent lists effectively in your platform, I guess, in that scenario, so that, or into independent segments in the platform, so that, okay, cool, to this list, we can maybe send transactional messages, but we can't send marketing messages. And this list, we can send both transactional and marketing messages to.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we have everything broken out, promotional, transactional, and then on the back end, whether it's P2P or A2P opt-in. And we use that across a lot of different things from, again, the SMS collection type. As a platform, we have our defaults to be compliant, but you as the end user, as a brand owner, you can configure those to however you want. Obviously, all the legal compliance risk falls on the brand owners. So we give you total control to be as compliant as you want, but out of the box, fully TCPA and CTIA compliant. And all of that kind of trickles down into our attribution settings as well. So let's say for promotional flows, you want to count all conversions, but maybe transactional flows, you don't want to count any. And then campaigns, you just want to restrict it to a discount being used or a link being clicked. You can do that all on the platform.
Amazing. Amazing. And if you were to look out over the next 6, 12, 18 months, I guess the hot buzzword of the day is AI. It's how can we make ourselves, both as a business building platforms and technology, how can we make ourselves more efficient by building faster, building new features, building new functionality faster, but then also how can we make our customers more efficient in the way that they use our platform by giving them AI features at their fingertips. What is your sort of hot take on AI as of today? And what do you think that how do you think that will impact your roadmap moving forward?
Yeah, sure. I have a lot of hot takes. For us, we're obviously using AI at the company in a big way. It's transformed how we do development. That's always been like our Achilles heels as a small bootstrap company. So that has been a massive unlock for us, just in terms of efficiency. And then on a personal level, exploring, like I'm sure you do, Claude, co-work and different skills, trying to see how we can intertwine it into our day to day. Because as a small 7-person bootstrap team, like we're always looking for efficiencies. From a company perspective, we launched in 2019 as a conversational SMS platform. And I think early 2020 pivoted from human to AI, back when AI was like not really a thing. And conversational was like a meme. So we were super early to that, and seeing this all kind of come to fruition now is definitely reaffirms that vision. So we're just really leaning into the AI native, AI first SMS platform, where a lot of our competitors, they are super big, well-funded VC-backed companies, large incumbents. They're not going to be able to make that change as quickly or even be as willing to make that change. It's just too much riding on it. So for us, we can be that fast-moving, nimble AI native SMS marketing company that's the next generation. And that can trickle down to everything from our conversational AI agent to other kind of AI native features that we have planned that I can't talk about just yet on this call to give anything away. But there's other interesting things too, using AI to have AI powered insights. So basically having, rather than talking to Claude to analyze your data, there's AI insights directly in the platform that's trained on our proprietary data that's actually able to give somebody that's not a retention marketer by trade, or maybe they can't afford an agency, able to give them the insights on how to better optimize SMS marketing as a channel so that you can really just Shopify's mission and empower the rebels, like just make the kind of playing field more leveled for the small guys and the underdogs that just don't have these massive marketing budgets, or maybe don't have the knowledge from a previous line of work. So I'm super excited about that, just empowering people to be better marketers through the platform, through AI, and just see how it handles interactions with customers as well. We know people like the kind of conversational nature of SMS, of being able to talk to an AI agent that feels human and converses to you like a person and is able to resolve your questions and concerns in an efficient manner. And that's one of the reasons I even started the company, because customer support, let's be honest, across a lot of companies and many industries sucks. So if you can tackle that, you can lean into that as a pillar of strength. And I think consumers, they've been trained on bad customer support, but when they get good customer support, they remember. And that's something that we've leaned into very heavily here. And it's something that we innately pass off to our clients through the conversational texting. It's just a byproduct of that as well.
And how do you how do you guys make your money? Is it just, obviously you got the infrastructure, you've got your SaaS platform
Yeah.
provided as a service. Is it a straight subscription? Is it a per send fee that you charge that covers both
Yeah.
your costs as well as a margin? Kind of is there tiers? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think our pricing is a lot more simple now than it was. If you had asked me this question a year ago, it would have been a mishmash of things. We used to have a platform fee, and then we only had the cart recovery thing. So it was like we did performance-based pricing, which it's funny. A year ago, that wasn't really super sexy. Now with AI, it's like we're seeing that also take a turn where performance-based or outcome-driven pricing is like becoming more acceptable. So it's interesting, as we killed that, it's like the sentiment around the community has changed, but we're thinking through that as well. But as it sits today, we're PLG, we're self-serve. We don't have a sales team or an enterprise or go-to-market motion. It's paid ads, it's organic, it's the Shopify App Store. So smallest plan's $29 a month. That scales up. There's a $79 tier, a $399 tier, and then custom enterprise option as well. Those are designed to be meaningfully cheaper at the kind of platform level than our large incumbents by nature. And that gets you access to all of the platform, the team, the features, all of our tier one support. And then to actually use the messaging, it's just a per messaging fee, very straight cut, simple. I think we got the lowest fees on Shopify now as well. So we're super excited by that. But basically on starter plans, it's 9/10 of a cent per SMS. And then that rate will scale down as your plan increases. You're basically incentivized to upgrade your plan to unlock better scale of the channel, and you'll pay a lower rate. Historically, with some of these companies, you'll have 1 to 3 year contracts that you'll sign, and they'll basically get you on a monthly or a quarterly commitment. And then that commitment in that contract will drive the rate that they give you, which is basically just like a repackaged version of what they're negotiating with Twilio. So for us, we try and keep it month to month. I think that is easier for consumer. It's better for us because if we're not performing, right, there's an incentive for us to perform. Otherwise, they can leave. And it's self-serve, right? We don't want to be dragging people down with 2-touch sales calls and contracts and all of that. It's just not a great buying experience. So I think people will start to wake up to that over time as well, especially with the kind of evolution that we're seeing here with AI. So that's how we think about pricing. There's more that goes into it. Obviously, there's the managed services component where we have like service elements that we're exploring, adding kind of an agency arm to the company that kind of makes sense now. And I'm sure you've seen lots of chats about who's going to win in long term. It's going to be the companies that are both SaaS and a service, right? Basically, agencies cosplaying as tech companies or vice versa. So we're exploring that. I think that's super interesting as well. As we know, agencies are pretty popular, good for cash flow, and there's a sort of different perceived value there. So if you have the infrastructure and the SaaS and you have an agency arm or a service arm, you can definitely do some damage. And for us having the native platform, I think it's just the next logical evolution. Where things get complicated though is that you start to add in other channels. So RCS or WhatsApp, there might be different price in there, or maybe it's SMS only, but you're in Mexico. So the SMS rates from Mexico is different than US and it's different than Portugal. That's the one thing I don't like about the pricing is I like to keep things simple. And even though I think our pricing is pretty simple by nature of the product and just the channel, things can become a little complicated just on countries, channels, rates, add-ons. So trying to navigate that is also just a fun challenge day in and day out. But I think we're working towards something that makes a lot of sense.
I love it. I love it. And look, it is straightforward. You've got the traditional starter, growth, pro, enterprise, gold, silver, bronze
Yeah.
type of scenario there. And then each tier comes with its own level of capability, functionality, enhancements, etc. But to your point, obviously, if you're working in the UK, Australia, Canada, US, the actual sending fees are different in each
Yeah.
country. So it is trying to keep it simple, but also trying to expand markets,
Yeah.
functionality, features, channels. It's
That time a few months ago, just like internally billing transparency. It was like better invoicing, better transparency on billing, cleaning up and simplifying the pricing. I don't handle the support tickets anymore, but I'm very keyed into our teams and we're always listening to customer feedback and seeing where we can improve. And that was one of the growing trends was just confusion and distrust around billing, those sorts of metrics. So trying to simplify that and improve that over time. And I think we're not 100% there, but I think we're getting close. And that's always the goal is to keep it fair, keep it transparent, and just to be disproportionately priced for value.
And how do you think about B2B? Because you're very retail focused right now. You're
Yeah.
retail brand focused. You're very Shopify focused.
Yeah.
Shopify is starting to do a little bit more in the B2B space with B2B on Shopify Plus. There's Spark Layer. There's a lot of B2B focused technology that sits on top of for brands that are maybe a D2C brand, but they want to expand into strategic wholesale opportunities. Those types of things. B2B e-commerce is growing at it's like an 8x rate or something like that
Mhm.
of retail e-commerce today. Is it something that you guys have considered branching out into more of a B2B motion and a B2B play? Because I still think that market is also underserved. And as somebody who lives
Yeah.
and breathes B2B every single day now, it's certainly something where digital capabilities are still lagging in the B2B
Mhm.
world. They're still B2B, if we were to just broadly say it's probably 5 to 10 years behind retail e-commerce
Yeah.
and digital marketing channels and capabilities and knowledge. And where do you see yourselves, or do you see yourselves doing anything in the B2B world at all?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually haven't. I've been spending a lot of time thinking through the natural expansion and evolution for the product and for the company. And funnily enough, I really haven't thought through the B2B like Shopify motion. So it's something I'm going to have to take back to the drawing board. But to that end, we talked about being SMS only, expanding into WhatsApp and RCS is that sort of natural evolution. And while we only support Shopify today, the next natural evolution beyond that is to take what we already do for Shopify and expand that to other commerce platforms, right? So your BigCommerce, your WooCommerce, your Adobe Commerce, your Salesforce Commerce Cloud. That seems to make the most logical sense. And I think with that, the product and the team and the company will be in a more mature spot where a lot of those companies, not that Shopify doesn't have large merchants, they do, but I think a lot of those other platforms, they do serve a different type of clientele, a little bit more enterprisey. So having us kind of transition into that will be the next evolution. Outside of that, and that's a big expansion in and of itself. But outside of that, we could look at the B2B play. I think that's super interesting. The other thing that's interesting, if we want, I was just at an event that we were sponsoring, and it was funny. A lot of the leads that were interested in SMS marketing in our company, they weren't even in the D2C and e-commerce realm. So it was these other sort of adjacent, unrelated industries, doctors, lawyers, real estate agents, all these different types of agent
Service
industries,
providers.
service providers. Yeah. And it's something that we historically, obviously, we don't support. We never really looked at. If you look at it from an SMS marketing TAM, retail, e-commerce, I think it's like 25% of the TAM is in that. So like we're capturing a quarter of the potential market. So logically, I think in a sort of phase 3 expansion, um, branching out beyond just e-commerce and D2C, taking what we know, which obviously there's going to be some similarities. Some things are going to be drastically different, right? Some industries, maybe they aren't so flow heavy, whereas e-commerce is. Some are a little bit more on the sort of transactional flow type of thing, or they're on campaign. So basically building out a version or a default template of the dashboard for each kind of industry and tailoring that, or even maybe bringing on like a forward deployed engineer type model where we build out whatever they need for that industry. That could be super interesting. But yeah, that's the current expansion plan that we're thinking about is complete product and channels within Shopify, beyond Shopify as e-commerce as a whole. And then beyond e-commerce and D2C to really try and tackle the broader SMS marketing industry, which is 3/4 of it is unservable by us right now. Super interested. There's a lot of potential left, a lot of potential left for us and the market as a whole.
Yeah, you definitely haven't hit a growth ceiling by any stretch of the imagination, especially by the sounds of
No,
it. If you could sprinkle fairy dust on our industry and you could change one thing about it at the snap of your fingers, what would it be?
that's an interesting question. I think AI might disrupt this a little bit. I'm like not super pro agency. And that's probably a little we don't have a big agency partnership program,
Mhm.
something that like we probably should build out. But even in my personal businesses and use cases, for me, agencies have always been, I've always viewed it as like a temporary fix. You bring an agency on, you have them set something up, learn from them, and then ideally you take it in house and run it yourself. It's not like a long term solution. I think when it's done that way, it can be good. I think a lot of people rely on agencies as a crux or a crutch to their problem, and they just become this like extension of the business and these kind of like lifelong partners. And I think it's going to become weird with AI because you see everyone that has an agency now talking about we can improve our margins, we can move 10x faster, we can do all those things, but they're not factoring in the kind of refactoring of the pricing. It's
Mhm.
assuming that customers are not going to be aware that they're using all of these things or not care. So if you were charging $5,000 a month to do X, Y, and Z 2 years ago, why are you charging $5,000 a month now when your margins just shot up? You've cut 50% of your staff and like you can provide the same service in a tenth of the time. It'll be interesting to see how that repricing happens, how quickly that happens, or how willing people are to continue paying that rate. I live on Twitter and AI and all that stuff. So I'm more in that bubble than most people. But I do see a repricing on agency services happening. I do see people just having, as we talked about in the beginning of the call, more autonomy on being able to spin up things themselves. Like, for example, we had an agency a couple of years ago build out like all of our life cycle flows for email for our customer, for our internal messaging. And I was reaching back out to them to get a quote and a timeline. I was like, what am I doing? Why wouldn't I just sit down with Claude for a day, build out everything, do the deep research, have one of my team members that has some experience in email, build this out. And that's what we're doing now. So it's even internally, we're figuring out ways to save time and money and not have to contract with agencies. So if we're figuring out ways to do that, naturally other people are as well. So I think seeing that kind of shift to relying heavily on agencies to being more of a self agency, right? Just being able to do things yourself, spin things up. I think that'll be a good thing. That'll change.
Yeah, and to your point, I think there's gonna be a lot more vendors offering agency-like services on top of
Yeah.
their own platforms. Now, I know a lot of brands and businesses that don't like that, mainly because then they feel like, not only am I locked into the platform, but I'm also locked in to the agency delivering the services on the
Yeah.
platform, and that feels, "Okay, cool. If I love the platform, but I don't love the people delivering it or delivering the services on top of it, then I got nowhere else to go, and so I
Yeah.
gotta cut ties with both the platform and the service provider."
Yeah.
But I think the nobody knows their platform like the vendor, right? That's the reality. Even if you have a
Yep.
really strong partner ecosystem, nobody knows your platform like you do. And so the reality is oftentimes the vendor is well placed to offer services over and above what an agency partner who might support 5 platforms
Yeah.
might be able to provide. But then on the flip side, in some instances, an agency will have a better holistic view of your platform than you will, whereas internally you might have one person that specializes in one module, another module. Like if you're
Yeah.
a modular, huge modular e-commerce platform, then, you'll have product managers within that business that know each sliver of their platform, but an agency might understand all of your platform holistically
Sure.
better than you do. So it is a catch-22. I don't think agencies are going away anytime soon, but I think the
No.
ones that do not adopt an AI first strategic approach and A, lower their prices, but B, increase the volume that they can put out
Yeah.
in terms of services and take on a larger client roster with a smaller team with the help of AI. Like for me, my goal with AI in my business is to reduce, like, if let's just say hypothetically in one customer cohort, the average duration of an engagement with me is 6 months. I want to shrink that to 3. So I want to say, okay, cool. Because I'm using these AI tools, because I'm able to do discoveries in a more efficient way, because I'm able to structure the data and artifacts that come out of discovery in a more efficient way, because I'm able to write things like BRDs in a more efficient way, because I'm able to do research on behalf of the customer in a more efficient way, because I've effectively got an
Yeah.
analyst sitting by my side, co-working with me. then I should be able to, in theory, bring down the duration of time it takes for
Sure.
me to deliver a tangible result for my clients. And so I think for me personally, agencies are going to have to go through a similar type of a crucible moment. They're going to have to say,
Mhm.
how can I demonstrate the value of AI to them via me? And they're probably not going to get as immersed in the AI tools as the agency will. And that's the benefit that an agency brings. If they're
Yep.
living inside these tools every single day and they're using them every single day and they're picking the right stack over time and evolving their stack over time that makes them more efficient incrementally over time, then I think they can continue to demonstrate value. But if they try to
Yep.
do things the way they've always done them, if they're not becoming AI first, if they're still charging the same rates that they've always charged, if they're still putting on the retainer the way that they've always done it, as opposed to maybe based on deliverables or something like that, I think the agencies that are stuck in a rut are really going to struggle over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it perfectly. Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better myself. I pretty much agree wholesale on that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Listen, if people want to get a hold of you, I'll drop a link to both your LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes. But other than that,
Yep.
how do you like the people to reach out and have a conversation about all things SMS marketing?
Yeah, probably. I'm most active on Twitter.
Okay.
So just at Kyle Bigley. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm on all socials, but yeah, I'd say Twitter is most active for all things e-commerce, bootstrapping, SaaS, SMS, etc.
I love it. I love it. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to flip the microphone. I get to hand it over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. Mr. Kyle Bigley from TxtCart, what is your question for me today?
It's a good one. I was not prepared for that.
That's always my hope. Catch them on the spot.
Yeah, catch me on the spot. Let's see. So I'm going to preface this question with a question. What is your go-to AI tool right now?
Man, that is actually a really
That
good
that's
question.
that's a good question. It's
Yeah, so I killed my paid subscription to ChatGPT 2 months ago.
good
I made
man.
an almost entire wholesale move over to Gemini as my primary
Okay.
daily tool. So about a year and a half ago, I routed all of my Omnibox queries to ChatGPT
Mhm.
initially. Then I actually found that ChatGPT's capabilities were degrading over time, not
Yeah.
getting better. And I found, as of a couple of months ago, there were lots of things that ChatGPT used to be able to do and formats of data it used to be able to deal with and spit out that it can't anymore.
Yeah.
They've limited its functionality.
Yeah.
So I switched to Gemini, which for me originally, like if I go back a year ago, Gemini was absolute rubbish. Gemini is actually really good. And because I'm a G Suite user for my business, it can actually easily tap into all my data and content within my business. And so Gemini has actually turned out to be really good. And so I've redirected all my Omnibox queries to Gemini now. But for coding and vibe coding, I worked with Lovable. I found it had a few too many limitations in it as of today. So I've just started playing with Claude Code and Claude Cowork. And I find that for certain things, Claude is the best, like
Yeah.
without a doubt, the best. But for like daily chat use, it's Gemini.
Yeah. Cool. Actually, I need to go check out Gemini. I have not used it even once. I use ChatGPT a little bit, but we're pretty much a Claude shop here for deep research, chat. Our entire coding infrastructure is Claude Code. But I remember it's probably 6 months ago, I had messed with some vibe coding stuff, and Replit really surprised me. I
Yes.
think they're similar to Lovable, where you could just like literally vibe code like an entire UI UX dashboard. I thought that was insane. But yeah, I'm not going to ask the second part of the question because that was enough of a tangent. I was going to ask you basically one thing you would want to change or improve on that tool. But if you told me what you'd want to change with Gemini, I wouldn't be able to relate because I haven't even hopped into Gemini myself yet. So I got to get on that.
Yeah, and I also still play with Grok. I find that Grok
Yeah.
as a backup chat tool, like if I want a really brutal, really like the least woke response
Hmm.
possible, if I want really like an unvarnished take on
Sure.
things, like Grok still provides probably the rawest answers to questions. So I do Grok as well.
Makes sense.
Amazing. Listen, this has been a fabulous conversation. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Yeah.
I
Same.
wish you every success with TextCart. And look, if you ever happen to be down in Mexico, look me up. We'll hook you up with a spare room and we'll hang out and we'll have some drinks and a barbecue on the rooftop
Yeah.
terrace. So thanks for your time.
100%.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.